The comeback of Ninja Gaiden in 2025 was a welcome surprise. Not only because this particular series was missing for a while, but because traditional hack and slash games overall slowly fell off the radar. After all, Souls-likes had kinda taken over the action genre, which doesn't have to be a bad thing. In fact, I consider Nioh 2 to be among the best games of developer Team Ninja. However, they already made 6 different games with this particular formula and in a much faster succession than Ninja Gaiden. Admittedly, the Ninja Gaiden franchise kinda lost its focus after producer Tomonobu Itagaki, who sadly passed away recently, left the company back in the day during the development of NG2. The games also never sold as much as Nioh did later on, so it was a surprise that they brought it back at all, let alone with 3 new titles, a remake of 2, a new side-scroller, and Ninja Gaiden 4. And here they tried their luck with a new lead developer, Platinum Games, which was responsible for competitors like Bayonetta before. And yes, that influence is noticeable right away. You play a wholly new character, with former protagonist Ryu relegated to a bonus role during a few backtracking chapters towards the end, and for chapter replays in NG Plus with only 1 weapon. However, when it comes to basic movements, the newcomer called Yakumo plays very similarly to older games. Control-wise, most basic attacks and combos remain the same, including maneuvers like the Izuna drop, which are iconic to the series. But aspects like the bow and the ninpo magic have been removed in favor of new abilities, because Platinum dug into its own repertoire. Now you also get an active parry similar to Metal Gear Rising, which activates by landing a hit at the same time as the enemy. You've got an evade bonus similar to Bayonetta or Nier Automata. And on top of that, there's the entirely new Blood Raven mode, which temporarily transforms your arms into even bigger weapons that can break unparryable attacks or tough defenses. This may sound like a case where they made the mechanics more convoluted just for the sake of complexity, but the gameplay loop actually works very nicely, because this variety of attack and counter mechanics creates an engaging gameplay flow. To gain control over the endless enemy hordes, all defensive mechanics are equally legitimate to use, and in the heat of battle it's satisfying to react dynamically to all the different attacks coming your way. All the counter mechanics are rewarding to pull off, because the enemy patterns and attack windows are just tight enough. There are dozens of combos to unlock, and it's easy to focus on your specific playstyle. So if you aren't a fan of dodging, you can focus on your blocking maneuvers, for example. Boss enemies are also well balanced in this regard and don't just follow a single winning strategy. In fact, in a series full of annoying boss fights, NG4 finally has them properly attuned to the mechanics. Enemies are as aggressive as ever, and the main characters are quicker than before, including a sprint button. Together with the multi-layered attack and counter mechanics, this speed results in intense battles that don't become stale even after the 10-hour campaign is over. Not to mention that it still has that satisfying combat feedback with weapons that feel hefty, ridiculous fountains of blood, and the camera dynamically zooming into brutal finishers. Now, with a total of 5 weapons for Yakumo, NG4 is not as varied as previous games. And it's certainly a choice to withhold additional weapons from the main game for DLC. Still, Yakumo's arsenal is at least completely new. Arguably, all the additions are a good fit for the combat and also a breath of fresh air, because they have quite different attacks than the old weapons. Personally, I didn't need the new lock-on feature, which is likely meant to appeal to the Souls crowd and makes things just slightly less intuitive in my opinion. Also, despite offering a decent challenge, the devs didn't seem to trust their own balancing and slowly restock your healing items if you die a few times, which is lame. But these are nitpicks. Overall, the mixture of old Ninja Gaiden with more flashy platinum mechanics creates a positive synergy. However, there's one glaring blemish. The game feels kinda cheap. And that doesn't just affect the visuals, but also the level and game design. Back in the day, Ninja Gaiden was state of the art. On the NES, it had dedicated cutscenes when storytelling was still a low priority in games. Then the reboot pushed the Xbox hardware beyond many of its competitors graphically. I know there were complaints about the Unreal remake of NG2 because a few spots, like the water level, received a more garish color palette. But all in all, that game looked like how I would imagine the series with modern graphics, while Ninja Gaiden 4 looks one generation behind that. It mostly consists of two visual styles, one being a dark cityscape, another consisting of generic tunnels and valleys. It almost feels like one half was built from Team Ninja's Neo and the other from Platinum's Astral Chain, yet they don't really match and neither look very advanced or coherent. I suppose the neon colors and the rain were an attempt to cover up a smaller budget, but it can't hide the last generation lighting and repetitive textures. Again, this isn't just a knock on the graphics. Earlier 3D Ninja Gaiden was an action-adventure with minor puzzles, parkour, and also exploring. The sequel scaled back the openness a lot, but still focused on building a number of immersive set pieces. Those games always had lots of different backdrops and obstacles packed into each level that made them unique. The fourth installment has very few minor branching paths and side quests, but the game now consists of drawn out tunnels and abstract platforms, which are loosely connected by QTE-like on-rail sections. In terms of gameplay, these connecting paths are very shallow. Think of Sonic games, where you run automatically and press QTE buttons to avoid scripted obstacles. You get tools like a hookshot or a surfboard for these sections, but they never evolve gameplay-wise. I mean, when you can use these items within the battles, they are usually good, but in between it's all half automated. And the general platforming too consists of automated running over yellow painted objects with no real stakes. To be fair, the platforming in prior titles was undercooked, but here they overcorrected. And ultimately the world feels artificial that way, like you're not in a real place. It's a shame because I'm a sucker for that original Asian cyberpunk. I should be the prime audience. I mean, there are a few moments where the art direction and sound actually come together nicely and in creative ways to capture the feeling of Ghost in the Shell and similar Japanese sci-fi. But these moments mostly drown in these bloated, bland locations. In a genre with repetitive gameplay, memorable backdrops and non-combat moments can make a noticeable difference. I still prefer Devil May Cry 3 over 5 because the latter only consists of muddy corridors in the second half. When it comes to pure combat and moment-to-moment gameplay, NG4 does have the potential to be at the top of the series. At the same time, I can't help but think how much better it could have been with tighter level design and more balanced production values.